Welcome everyone to Legal Innovation Zone's The Legal Gold Rush, Unmet Legal Needs. This is our first in the series after we ran about 4 lawyering from home webinars. So thank you for joining us once again. My name is Hirsch Perlis, the director of the Legal Innovation Zone. We have Chris Bentley on the line, managing director, and obviously Jack Newton. So just before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, if this is the first time that you're joining us, please send in questions, chat your questions to Chris Bentley, and he will be asking the questions throughout the presentation. The session is being recorded. We have everyone muted. You shouldn't be able to unmute yourself, but obviously please do not unmute it. And we always strongly encourage feedback. So if you are thinking about different sessions that you'd like to hear about, different topics, different speakers, please shoot us off emails or comments. We strongly appreciate all of that. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. We love the fact that we have Jack to kick off this series, and I'll hand it off to Chris.
Well, thanks very much, Hirsch. Welcome, everybody. 5 years ago, Hirsch and I co-founded the Legal Innovation Zone to help startups really help build better legal solutions for consumers. So how fitting it is today that we have Jack Newton, co-founder and CEO of Clio, a cloud-based law practice management solution, which really builds better legal solutions for lawyers and consumers. It's really exciting. Clio started about 2008, cloud-based. Now at the time, pretty radical, Jack. And not only has Jack co-founded Clio, which is used now around the world. We've been using it in our lawyer licensing program, the law practice program, for 6 years now from the very beginning. Delighted with it, Jack. But he's also an author, recent author, a client-centered law firm. Fantastic read, Jack. Really appreciate that. And is president of the Legal Cloud Computing Association. So, Jack, with that, I understand you're in Vancouver, where for the past 3 weeks it's been bright and sunny. Hirsch and I are in Ontario, and we both had snow over the past 2 hours. Welcome to the broadcast.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Chris and Hirsch. It's an honor to be here, and I apologize for the discrepancy between our 2 weather systems at the moment. Vancouver's been a great place to be stranded over the last 3 weeks.
So, Jack, you've with COVID, you've been social distancing. We're all working from home. How has that been for you, and how has it been for Clio?
Yeah, so I'll start off with Clio on March 13th, which feels like a lifetime ago, but is really just 5 weeks ago. We sent the entire company home to mandatory work from home and shut our 5 worldwide offices. And so that meant 500, virtually overnight, we closed down the office. We announced the closure on a Friday, and on Monday, the 17th, everyone started working from home. And a few comments. I think number one, it was a remarkably seamless transition because we were cloud-based, and we, as I like to put it, drink our own champagne or alternately eat our own dog food. We're a completely cloud-based company. We didn't have and don't have a single on-premise server of any kind. All of our employees have laptops. So working from home meant, as long as you had a good internet connection, and this actually became, kind of the highest priority thing for people to get, was make sure you have a good, stable internet connection at home. But as long as you have that good internet connection, everyone in the company, and I think everyone in the company, I've emphasized with the team many a time, we should all feel very lucky and privileged that we were able to pick up our work and take it home. There's many people that obviously cannot do that, that are being impacted by this, aside from the health crisis, very severely on the economic side. And I'm thankful we were able to make that transition so seamlessly. But 500 people overnight virtually went home and started doing their jobs, picking up the phone for customer support, shipping product for our customers. without missing a beat. And for me personally, it's meant working from my home office here in Deep Cove, which is in North Vancouver, which is, as you might expect, on the north side of the Burrard Inlet in Vancouver. So this is number one, a beautiful place that when you want to get outside and do all the things that kind of provide a little bit of relief from being locked up in your home, this is a great place to go hiking and exploring. And I've been out kayaking, and it's provided, the outdoors has provided a great respite for me from the pretty grim headlines that I'm processing through the day. And I'm here at home with my wife Tanya and our 3 kids who are 11, 9, and 7. So they're all trying to do school from home, and Tanya and I, on top of our full-time jobs, are trying to juggle supporting the kids, doing their homework and doing Zoom meetings. And my son did phys ed to start off the day over a Zoom call. So it's a new reality, but I think maybe it's the entrepreneur in me is actually really enjoying all of this change and enjoying all of the almost dynamic that this crisis has created in terms of being able to innovate and do new things and kind of lean into new experiences. And most days I've really enjoyed spending a lot more time with the family and the kids especially.
Well, that is, if there's a benefit in a pandemic, that certainly is a benefit for many. From the beginning of the pandemic, you and your company recognized the challenges that it would present to the legal profession.
Right.
And you started a fund.
Yeah. So as soon as we took care of Clio's needs and knew that our employees would be safe, and we established work from home, and we made that transition mid-March, our attention really rapidly turned to our customers and how are we going to help our customers navigate this crisis. And what's so interesting is, it was very clear to me immediately that there's a few things that were going to have to happen for the law firms that were going to survive this crisis. Number one, if you're not on the cloud, you need to get on the cloud. Full stop. You need to be cloud-based to survive this pandemic. The second thing that is highly related to being cloud-based, but is almost completely orthogonal from a skill set and deployment perspective, is law firms also need to learn how to work remotely, work in a distributed fashion, and not have any of the traditional management crutches that many law firms depended on to run a productive practice. There was instantly, for many law firms, a level of trust that needed to exist between them and their employees that may not have needed to exist in a bricks and mortar law office. So the way I thought about the problem that the legal industry was facing was one that Clio had actually really figured out how to solve over the last 12 years. Number one, being cloud-based, way back in 2008, we decided we as a company would be completely cloud-based. Again, drinking our own champagne, and we have every system that we depend on based in the cloud. And so we've got 12 years of expertise in terms of what does cloud-based collaboration look like. And then in terms of running remote, interestingly, when Ryan Goverill, my co-founder, and I founded Clio back in 2008, we were in 2 different cities. Ryan was here in Vancouver, and I was living in Edmonton, Alberta, where, for the first 2 years of building Clio, I lived in Edmonton, and we hired our first handful of employees over those first 2 years as work from home distributed employees in both Edmonton and the broader Alberta province, as well as Vancouver and more broadly BC. So we've inadvertently for 12 years built this real DNA in our company around what remote working looks like and how to have a distributed team. And importantly, the kinds of impacts that has on your culture, the fact that you do trust your employees in a different way. You also measure your employees in a different way. When you think about their their output. You really care about, are you getting your job done? Are you delivering the things I expect you to in your role, as opposed to, was your bum in your seat at 8 a.m. and did you stay in your seat until 6 p.m. or whatever you feel as a manager, the right number of hours for your employees to be sitting in their seat. And we were conscious very early on that the idea of people sitting in their seat and being productive was often an illusion, and really what you should be looking at is what did they produce. So we realized that these two things that we had built an incredible competency around over the last 12 years were the two things that were going to be instrumental to law firms that figure out how to survive this crisis, which is being cloud-based and embracing the cloud in a really deep way, and being distributed, and figuring out how to not only be distributed within your firm, but figure out how to be remote and delivering legal services to your clients over the internet as well. And again, these are things we've been doing for over a decade. So with that clarity, what we realized was let's fund a relief initiative with $1 million, and we committed $1 million of our own funds. And as you can imagine, that was an interesting discussion with my board, for example, where every company on the planet is battening down the hatches and preparing for war. And I said, I want to give $1 million to our customers. And I made the case, and the selfish aspect to that initiative was one of, if this industry doesn't survive, there's no Clio. And if we don't figure out a way of helping not only our customers, but the broader industry figure out how to navigate this challenge, there's a real risk that it comes out really significantly weakened from this crisis. We feel like we've got a lot of knowledge to share. We've got the resources from an economic perspective to really help a lot of law firms navigate this crisis. Ended up getting very enthusiastic and unanimous support from the board to deploy this $1 million COVID-19 relief initiative. And we announced that the first week we went remote, the week of, I think it was March 14th, we announced this initiative, and have been busily at work over the last month deploying that capital in a multitude of ways.
Well, apart from the fact that it's a fantastic initiative, Jack, and thank you and your company for doing that and helping so many, it's a great springboard to the next question, because the conversation you had with your board about giving money at a time when the inclination would be to hoard it is probably a similar conversation to what you and your co-founder had in 2008 when you decided to launch a cloud-based law practice management system into a very conservative, traditional profession.
Right.
Why'd you do it?
So, it was interesting. In 2007, what was clear to both me and Ryan from a technology perspective, and just as a very brief aside, both Ryan and I are technologists. We're not trained lawyers. I've got a master's degree in computer science, so I look at the world through a computer scientist lens. And what I saw in 2007 was this disruptive wave of transformation that was called the cloud was going to impact every industry on the planet, and that there was almost a once in a lifetime chance to ride that technological transformation wave and do something really cool with it. And as somebody who I think was always entrepreneurial, somebody who loved technology, what I saw was like I said, this real once in a lifetime wave that if we got our timing right, we could catch it and have some real impact. And these kinds of disruptive waves of technology really don't come along all that often. Like, we had the PC in the early 1980s. We had the internet in the early 2000s. We had mobile in the 2010 era. And that's really been, I think, the last major wave of transformation. AI and ML are percolating, but we saw this real opportunity. So we became what I describe as two hammers looking for a nail. We really understood that the cloud was going to change everything. And we started looking for industries that were ripe for disruption. And we were doing this in a pretty industry agnostic way. We had no particular industry in mind other than we wanted to find one that was ripe for disruption from a technological perspective. And Ryan at the time worked for Gowlings, which is one of Canada's largest handful of law firms, over 1,000 lawyers at Gowlings. And he was their IT manager, and he said, you know what, like the IT we use at Gowlings kind of sucks. It seems like all legal technology sucks. Maybe this is an interesting opportunity. We got in a conversation with Kenzie Gowden, who's the director of practice standards, or I should say was the director of practice standards at the time at the Law Society of British Columbia. And the very serendipitous conversation that happened with Kenzie was one where he was describing how many of the ethics and malpractice related claims that the LSBC needed to handle came from its solo and small firm membership. And virtually none of the ethics and malpractice complaints were aimed at their large law firm membership. And we pulled at this thread with Kenzie and asked him, well, why is that? And he said, well, there's kind of the obvious reasons around human infrastructure. If a large law firm lawyer drops a ball or forgets about an important limitation date on their case, they've got an army of paralegals and support staff that will catch that ball before it hits the floor. A solo lawyer, definitionally doesn't have that support staff. So they forget about something, they forget a limitation date, they make a mistake handling trust funds, they don't keep their clients up to date from a communication standpoint. That's on them, and there's no one to catch that mistake. And that was, really if you kind of do the 5 whys analysis, that was the first why. The second why that we pulled at was, why don't they use technology in place of people then? Why don't those solo and small firm lawyers use what we looked at? We looked at the marketplace and saw all of these practice management solutions, like just to name off a few from the top of my mind: Practice Master, Tabs 3, Time Matters, Abacus, Amicus Attorney, you name it. The list went on for seriously over a dozen practice management platforms. Why don't they use one of those platforms? And Kenzie's response to us was, they're all too expensive and too hard to use. And even if you're a small firm with 2 or 3 support staff, you still need to buy a server and get a CD-ROM, and as antiquated as this all seems now, hire an IT consultant to set up that server and get your staff up and running. And so that the light bulb moment for us back in 2007 was, we found our nail. We said, practice management software that is cloud-based, targeted at the solos and small firms of the world that do not have their needs met by traditional on-premise software vendors. And when we did our market research, we were amazed that there was no one in the industry doing this. So there was no startups doing cloud-based practice management software, and the incumbents like Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis seemed to have no idea the cloud even existed. We dug through their websites and tried to find even a small hint that they were starting to develop products for the cloud, and the simple answer was they weren't. So one of my mentors at the time told me, when I was testing this, I said, it seems like a good idea. I just don't understand why no one else is doing it. He said, if you've got a great idea that there's no competition for, it's either a stupid idea or you're about to become very wealthy. And, I kind of laughed and I said, well, let's hope for the latter. And Ryan and I jumped in with both feet, pulled shoots on our full-time jobs, started, really bootstrapping the company from the get-go. Funded it with all the startup tropes. I maxed out my credit card. I mortgaged my house. I funded the company, really with just a lot of debt backed by, what few assets we had. And, the big bet we were taking at that time, that, every prospective investor that passed on the deal, as well as the ones that kind of bought into the thesis eventually and did invest in the company, I helped us identify was the whole idea hinged on, will lawyers ever get comfortable with their data being stored in the cloud? And that was really the biggest risk we saw to Clio as a concept. But that's the Clio story in a nutshell in terms of where we went from idea to founding the company.
And from the beginning, you didn't just rely on your own knowledge of technology or what you saw outside. You did two things. You spoke to lawyers constantly, endlessly, to identify, I think you call it in your book that I'll ask you about in a minute, the problem. What is
Right.
the real problem? But
Right.
you also spoke to customers. You
Yeah.
spoke to the people who needed legal services to find out what they were really looking for. And you incorporated all of that information as you built Clio. You started from the very beginning, looking at the people who would use it and the people who would need the services from the people who'd use it.
Right. And I was inspired by a book that I would recommend everyone listening to this read, which is a book called Stephen Blank called 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And what Stephen Blank talks about in this book, and it's one of the most influential books I've ever read from a business context perspective. The concept he talks about in this book is basically one of, forget about the concept of product development. This idea that I'm developing a product and let's think about the box that the product is in and what features you read about on the side and how much does it cost. And the product development exercise, forget about that. That's not actually what people care about. Think about customer development and forget about the product. Think about developing the customers and a persona for the customers that will buy this product, and go in and understand what their needs are and work backward from that. And the product that they need will end up being obvious when you go through this customer development exercise. And one of the important theses that Stephen talks about in this book is the idea that if you find one customer, you'll probably be able to find 10 customers, and you'll probably be able to find 1,000 and 10,000 customers once you find that customer profile that you can start developing a product against. And so that's really been central to my thinking, both in developing Clio over the last decade, but also I often think, and I think it's a really important point on the perspective we have from Clio, when we're thinking about our product and the problems we're solving for the legal space, we're really thinking one step beyond the lawyers we serve and thinking about their clients and what are their clients looking for that we can help enable our customers, our lawyers, to do a better job of serving those needs. And one of my favorite sayings is, our job is to make our customers look like they have superpowers for their clients, and if we can make them look awesome, we're winning. And that's kind of the 2 layers of the customer development exercise we're always going through at Clio.
And Jack, who were the first customers of Clio? And did they buy for the reasons you thought they would buy for? That's one of our questions.
So, my favorite story, one of my favorite stories about Clio's early days, there's many, but one of them is of our first customer when Ryan and I launched the beta for Clio back in 2008. It was the ABA Tech Show in March of 2008. We launched our beta. And, we had what I think is, an innovative onboarding process for a beta where we didn't just let anybody who wanted access to the beta into the beta. And we were number one, kind of concerned about trade secrets. We felt like we were developing this stealth technology and didn't want any competitors to start ripping off what we were doing. But we also wanted to vet the people that were going into the beta and make sure that they actually understood how they could use the product, and importantly, how they shouldn't use the product. And one of the things we made really clear in this onboarding webinar that we did for every new beta customer was we walked them through the fact that, look, you can use this product for testing purposes and for feedback purposes, but this is a beta. And this means that we could accidentally lose your data. We could deliberately purge your data. There will be bugs throughout the software that you will discover in using the beta. So please do not use this for your production data. And then, on one random weekend early in this beta development process, we started getting these error messages through the weekend. So when somebody ran into an error on Clio, and you'd see the equivalent of a "whoops, something went wrong" kind of error page, Ryan and I would get an email saying that, with a diagnostic of what the error was. It's called a stack trace. So we would get these stack traces in our inbox, and they were all coming from one user. And it was really clear that they were, using the product really heavily through this weekend. And, the user's name was Catherine Marino Riesman. And I remember saying to Ryan at the time, it was kind of a really good kick in the ass for us. I said, Ryan, Catherine is clearly trying to make Clio work for her actual law practice. She's not testing it. She's not kicking the tires. She's not looking at it to give us feedback. She's using it. And I started emailing her and saying, like, hey, Catherine, it looks like I'm sorry for the issues you're running into. Are you using the product on a kind of dedicated, real use case basis? And she said, yeah, I love it. And yeah, I've run into a few errors. Am I doing something wrong? And I kind of laughed and said, no, we're doing a lot of things wrong. But we're going to work hard to fix the errors you run into. And the really like catalyzing thing about this experience with Catherine was, it was a call to action for me and Ryan to, I remember saying to Ryan at the time, we've got to make Clio work for Catherine. And back to this Stephen Blank 4 Steps to the Epiphany frame, if we make it work for Catherine, it will work for 10 others and 100 others and 1,000 others beyond that. So we worked tirelessly around the clock to make sure Catherine stopped running into any errors around Clio. And 6 long months / short months later, we felt like we were at 1.0. We felt like Clio was ready to release to the wild and ready to become a revenue producing product. So we released at the ABA GP Solo Small Firm Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In October 1st of 2008, we released Clio as a paid real product to the world. We were the first cloud-based practice management system to come to market, and coincidentally, Catherine, who over the course of those 6 months became one of hundreds of beta users, she became our first paying customer as well. So one saying that I have for many startup founders that are often struggling with this concept of who's my target customer and how big is my TAM and all of these kinds of questions, I often boil my experience down to a recommendation, which is find your Catherine. If you're building a startup, don't worry about the product in the box and what it looks like and what the list of features is. Find your Catherine that you think you can build a product against, essentially. And as long as you've done a good job of picking your Catherine, you will have a great product on your hands. And the really key thing here is, and this is very nuanced and difficult to get right, but make sure that the Catherine you're picking is representative of a larger market. If Catherine had a bunch of esoteric, idiosyncratic, weird workflows and just ran her practice in a completely bizarre way, we could have built a product that was essentially a custom designed solution for Catherine and no one else. But yeah, Catherine was one of our very first beta customers and our first paying customer. And in fact, we named our customer awards that we launched 3 years ago after Catherine at the annual Clio Cloud Conference. We give out a handful of awards from everything from legal innovation to best nonprofit use case to our customers. And they're the Reason Awards named after Catherine.
That's a great story. And you mentioned that you're trying to give your customer lawyers those superpowers so they can look like superheroes to their clients. And one of the things that you've done and released at your conferences, your Clio conferences, is the research you've conducted through the legal trends reports.
Right.
Research of customers. What
Yes.
are customers looking for? And you share that with the lawyers so that the lawyers can make themselves and their practices stronger. Tell us a little bit about that, and maybe include some of the key findings. There were some pretty eye-opening findings that you...
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big fan of using data to tell a story, and using data also to settle arguments. I find that there's a lot of opinions in legal.
Oh, yes.
But the great thing is, if you support an opinion with data, it quickly becomes a fact. And so I had a few hypotheses about the legal space that I wanted to prove out with data. I think one of the early legal trends report was supporting a hypothesis I had that most lawyers are spending way too much of their time not doing actual legal work, but all spending a lot of time on the administrative overhead of running a law practice, marketing a law practice, and doing all sorts of non-billable work. And in the inaugural legal trends report, we looked at the aggregated and anonymized data of hundreds of thousands of Clio users, and looked at what some companies refer to as data exhaust, which is the contrails that our customers leave in the sky when they're using Clio. And you look at that data again on a high level, anonymized and aggregated basis, and we could see that the average utilization rate for a lawyer in the US was only slightly above 0.25, meaning that they're only using 25% of their time for billable work, just north of 2 hours a day of billable work. And then when you look at it's shocking. And you look at the funnel, we called it a devastating funnel, because you look at this funnel and it's, you've got the utilization rate of, call it 25%. You've got the collection rate, the realization rate next, which is the next set of the funnel, which is what of those hours make it on a bill that you send to your client, which was only about 80%. And then you looked at the collection rate, which is the final step of the funnel, which is what your clients end up actually paying you of what you invoice them. And that was about 80%. And you look at that devastating funnel, and the average lawyer is only getting paid for 1.8 or so hours a day of work. And it explains why, especially so many solo small firm lawyers really struggle to make it. This is not the career they signed up for when they thought about, living in a nice house and driving a Porsche around when they went into law school. They're often, when you take out the overhead costs of running a law firm, really eking out a pretty meager existence. And we had, for the first time in the industry, I think it was a real watershed moment, large scale data-driven analysis of law firm economics. The next place I turned our attention in last year's legal trends report, as well as the 2008 legal trends report, was what I regarded to be a massive chasm between client expectations and lawyers' expectations of what those client expectations were. Essentially, if you think about what is a lawyer's ability to guess what their clients want and how they want to see their legal services delivered, there was a massive gap between that perception of needs and wants and desires and what consumers actually want. So again, we went to prove out that hypothesis with a large-scale survey of both lawyers and consumers. And these reports are freely downloadable, by the way. If you just Google Clio Legal Trends Report, these will be at the top of the list, and they're completely free to access. But they detail the enormous gap between client expectations and lawyer expectations, and they also highlight, I think, in a lot of ways, how actionable those insights are, and some really low-hanging fruit for lawyers to put to work to better, bridge the divide between how consumers want to access legal services and how they're currently delivering them.
And I remember reading the research, and it was a big ouch moment, I suspect, for many of our colleagues. And I remember reading, there was one stat about uh, when customers are looking for a lawyer, they just want to be called back. And
Oh, right.
lawyers thought they were calling them back within a day, but the clients weren't getting called back. Talk about that just a little bit.
Right. So the latest chapter of the Legal Trends Report proved out another hypothesis that that I had, which was, despite the fact that so many lawyers complain about the fact they don't have enough clients, they really don't do a good job of closing the leads that they do get. And part of what formed my perspective on that over the last couple of years is we acquired a company called Lexicata back in 2018, and integrated that technology into a new product, Clio's second product called Clio Grow. And it's a legal CRM, which is a customer relationship management product. And what I discovered in having conversations with many lawyers, and again, going through this customer development exercise, is that many lawyers, never mind the fact that they may never have heard of CRM or customer relationship management, but you talk about the concept of a lead, and they don't even understand what a lead is. The idea that there's this pre-client state that people live in before you convert them to a client was news to them. I also had this anecdotal evidence from Mark Britton, who subsequently joined our board, and he shared with me in one of our earlier conversations when he was still at Avo, that fewer than 1 in 10 lawyers that Avo routed a qualified lead to would ever respond to that lead. So think about that. You're a lawyer, and Avo's basically forwarding you a lead saying, this is a consumer that needs legal help. Their response rate in their kind of pre-vetted, pre-approved network was less than 10%. So my hypothesis was, I think the legal industry is atrocious at following up on clients and prospective clients, leads that reach out to the industry for help. And the 2019 Legal Trends Report deep dives on this hypothesis and proved it out actually to be a much worse state of affairs than I would have even guessed going into the data analysis. We saw that average response times were measured in days rather than hours. And shockingly, we saw with again, leads that were from the outside in, perfectly legitimate looking leads, both by phone and by email to a law firm, that a majority of those leads were not even responded to. Never mind what is the response time, but they were never followed up with. And coming from one of the most useful lenses I've found that I'm able to offer to the legal industry as a perspective is being inside the software as a service world. I get a perspective on data and consumer expectations that I'm able to share with the legal industry. And as a as a software as a service company, which is the category of company that Clio is, when you're talking about, when we have somebody follow up, like download a trial of Clio or otherwise engage with us as a company, best in class software as a service companies respond to those leads in minutes, not even hours or days. But there was a really interesting study published by Serious Insights that showed, essentially an exponential decay in lead response rates, one measured in hours. So basically, you're at the top of the curve in less than an hour, and then you see this exponential decrease in response rates. The half-life of a lead is measured in about an hour. And if you're waiting 1 or 2 days to get back to a lead, which is the SLA, the service level agreement many law firms have with themselves, well, we'll get back to you within a business day or two. You realize from a consumer perspective, that is geological time. That is not nearly fast enough. And if you want to be responsive, it needs to be measured in minutes. So for me, what became really clear, and what part of what our current mission is at Clio, is how do we pull lawyers closer to what that consumer expectation is so that they can thrive in this environment. If lawyers think that 2 days is acceptable and consumers think 2 minutes is acceptable, how can we bridge that divide? And I actually think it is a bridgeable divide, but technology has got to be an instrumental component of how we bridge that chasm.
And what you've done, Jack, is, and I see it's on the shelf behind you, but you've written a client-centered law firm, a client-centered
This is
lawyer.
my marketing plug in my for my webinars.
It's a great book and a great
Thank
read.
you.
And you've collected your journey with Clio and your findings and your own knowledge and the countless discussions you and your team have had with lawyers, and given us really a how-to manual to take our law firm from wherever it is to where we would all like it to be. And maybe just share a few of what are the key thoughts or insights from the book?
Sure. So what I did with this book, Chris, is I really bottled up the sum total of my insights and perspectives of being inside this industry for 12 years. And, I really looked at it as a bit of a call to arms, because what I was, frankly, a little bit discouraged by is the fact that Clio has really at this point become my life's work. I've been working on this for 12 years, and our mission statement is to transform the practice of law for good. And I see so much opportunity for lawyers to thrive in this industry, for them to deliver legal services in a way that makes their clients happier, and for us to collectively increase access to justice. And I know it all hinges on the adoption of technology. And I felt really that, hey, we've done some great things at Clio over the last 12 years, but things just aren't moving fast enough. And I need to get the word out about the opportunity that's out there. And for me, one of the catalyzing moments around writing this book was looking at the World Justice Project report from a couple of years ago that highlighted the fact that 77% of legal needs go unaddressed by lawyers. And then if you think about that as the demand side of the equation in kind of a Keynesian economics way, you look at the supply side of people that can solve those legal problems, being lawyers and legal professionals more broadly. And again, through the Legal Trends report, we know that 80+% of them are telling us that the number one thing they need in their firm is more clients and more revenue. You look at that almost like paradoxical inequality, and any normal market that's functioning efficiently would figure out a way of connecting those two opportunities, right? This enormous demand side for legal services and this enormous supply side of people that can deliver those legal services. And really, for me, what is at the heart of that disconnect is the fact that lawyers, and I'm speaking in very broad terms here, lawyers in general do not think about their legal services and the way they deliver them in a client-centric way. The way that legal services are delivered today is often, if you think about it on a hereditary basis, the way that legal services were delivered by their grandfather and their great-grandfather and their great-great-grandfather. And lawyers learn how to deliver legal services from the people that they study under. And the whole model is just ripe for disruption. And if you disrupt the traditional model, there's, I believe, boundless opportunity. And that is evidenced by many innovators in the legal space. And I'll use a handful of examples here. You look at people like Erin Levine of Hello Divorce, that she took a divorce model and found a way of delivering it online in a very affordable way. And she's now doing divorces for a fixed fee of $500 that used to be $15,000 divorces. She's increased access to justice, if you want to frame it that way, and I do think it's a form of access to justice. And in the meantime, the truly incredible part is that she's got happier clients out of that process because they're in a very streamlined and regimented in a productive way process. And the most incredible thing is that all of the attorneys that work for Erin at Hello Divorce are making more money than they were when they're working at a traditional bricks and mortar law firm delivering divorces in the old fashioned way, running up bills of $15,000+. So to me, if you take this client-centered approach, which is exactly what Aaron did, you can actually create a win-win-win. You can create a win for your clients. You can create a win for yourself and your law firm, and you can create a win for access to justice. And I think the need for more client-centered thinking is the reason I wrote the book. And I felt additionally that the perspective I was able to offer, almost as an industry outsider, again, with this business and technology training as my background, to me, some of the things that legal needs to do, not just to survive, but to thrive, seem kind of obvious. But when I sit down and have a dinner or a lunch or a phone conversation, a Zoom conversation with a lawyer, I come away from those conversations realizing this isn't obvious for everyone. And I kind of owe it to myself to write these ideas down in a book and share them out and see what the response is. And if it's polarizing either in the positive or negative direction, that's great, because now we're having a discussion.
So the example you gave, Hello Divorce, and there'd be many others, is a way of tapping what would otherwise be unmet legal need, because those customers were not prepared to pay what is often an hourly rated service, lots of money for something they need. And Ms. Levine comes along with a new model, a new perspective, taps into the market that's sitting there, makes other lawyers money, so everybody's happy. Just by looking at
win-win-win. Win-win-win. And those opportunities exist in every practice area, in every geography, for lawyers that want to think innovatively. Even if you think about something as foundational to the profession as the billable hour model, it is a model that is lawyer-centric and not client-centric. Who's the billable hour good for? It's good for lawyers that want predictability in terms of how they translate their time in a day into dollars in their pocket. And does a client understand the billable hour model? No. Do they understand what they're getting into when they come to you for a divorce and you say, I'm not sure how many hours this will be, but my hourly rate is $250 an hour. And on average, it's $15,000, and it could be as high as $50,000 or even $100,000, depending how contentious things get. I mean, Ed Walters uses this great example of the billable hour model compared to ordering lobster at a restaurant,
Right.
where your waiter says, "I will deliver you, the most delicious lobster, but it's market price." And you as the attendee at the restaurant ask, well, what's the market price today? And the waiter says, well, I can't tell you that until you've had your lobster served, because it will depend on how long the fisherman takes to catch the lobster, how much the lorry driver charges to take the lobster from the docks to the restaurant, how long the cleaning process takes in the kitchen, and finally how long our chef takes to prepare it. But we'll be able to tell you what the final price is then. And that's really, if you think about it in a nutshell, how legal services are delivered in large today. And I think Aaron and many others that are thinking innovatively are thinking about how do I actually design services starting with the client. And you asked for a few of the takeaways that the book has, and just to share a few of the important concepts. Number one is to take this back to the founding principle at Clio, take this customer development approach, take the idea that there's a market for my legal services out there. But what you want to work backward from is what kind of problem is a certain profile or persona of person encountering that I might be able to help them solve. Again, you're not in the business of delivering legal services. You're in the business of solving people's problems. And can you work backward from that principle to think about how do you wrap your legal services and law firm around them? That also requires, to do that really well, I believe, requires a deep level of empathy. and this is one of the concepts I talk in the book about quite a bit, which is, if you really develop empathy for your clients, if you really truly put yourselves in their shoes and consider their broader context for how you're helping them through even something as straightforward as, for example, a real estate lawyer helping a consumer with a house purchase, or somebody that is helping somebody do their first will. How do you think about the broader context of what they're encountering? And again, as the wills and estates lawyer, you're not selling a will, you're selling peace of mind. And how do you really think about delivering that peace of mind in the most effective way? And I'll give you an example. My old lawyer in Edmonton, did our will for us back like 20 years ago, before I was married, before I had kids, before I started Clio. And he gave me this will, and I've actually got it in an envelope in my office here. He gave me this will in a sealed envelope and said, "Here's your will, Jack, have a great life." And that was literally the last time I talked to that lawyer. If you think about, instead of delivering this product that is the will that, I got, 3 hours of his time and a $750 bill, whatever it was at the time. If you thought about, I'm delivering peace of mind to Jack, what he would think about is Jack's life is going to change a lot over the next 20 years. He might get married. He might have kids. He might found a company. And if you look at my legal needs and how they've evolved over the last 20 years, they've evolved hugely. And what I would think about if I was a lawyer taking this customer-centered approach to, or client-centered approach to designing legal services, I would tear up my $750 will package and say, you know what? I offer $100 a year will subscription. And I will update your will every year free of charge, or included in this $100 subscription fee. And you tell me what's gone on with your life. You tell me if you've gotten married, if you've gotten divorced, if you've had kids, if you've adopted kids, if you've founded a company, if you've moved house. You tell me any of these things that's changed in your life, and I'll update your will included for this $100 a year package. And you think about it from a lifetime value perspective. And again, this is like kind of software as a service concepts I'm cribbing into the legal space here. If you think about a lifetime value from me as a client, let's say you enter that subscription agreement with me when I'm 20. And let's say I live to 100 or whatever my kind of most likely, let's say 100 just for argument's sake. You've got $8,000 of lifetime value with me over those 80 years, compared to most people would feel like, where do I max out like $1,000 for a will? Like, what's reasonable to charge? But for that peace of mind, I'm willing to pay you over the course of 80 years, $8,000 for that peace of mind, maybe even more. Maybe that's a $200 premium package. And I think lawyers that are thinking innovatively could, again, look to Kimberly Bennett's another example I use in the book. Kimberly Bennett's an IP lawyer, and she designs her IP packages around subscription services. Yep. And she gets 80% of her revenue guaranteed every month through her subscriptions. So again, if you're on the billable hour model, you're back to zero every month. You're figuring out what clients can you start working with and what new work's coming in the door. And you're kind of on this hourly treadmill. Kimberly's got 80% of her revenues secured at the start of every month, thanks to this subscription service. So I think thinking about, the customer journey, developing empathy for them, really understanding what is the core problem you're solving. Think about how that example I talked about with wills and estates applies to your practice area, and how can you tear up everything you thought you understood about how to deliver legal services in that context, and start from scratch, working backward from the client, thinking about their broader client journey, and thinking about how you can be a partner to them through that entire journey.
So if I've got a traditional practice, as we near the end of our time, Jack, and I've got Clio, but I've got a traditional practice.
Yep.
What are 2 or 3 steps I should take? Recognizing that I've got a day-to-day practice, there are pressures of law and life. Where do I start?
So I'll give you 2 answers. One is, if this was a pre-COVID-19 world, I would say start small. start incrementally, start testing things. And I think a lot of lawyers think about projects being kind of big, boil the ocean monoliths of a project that I've got to stop my firm for a month and freeze time and redesign every aspect of how I do things. And that's not necessary. Like keep the 95% of your practice running as it was, and start experimenting with a more client-centered approach with your new clients or with a small handful of your existing clients. Think about the more innovative, more open-minded clients you might have and say, hey, I'm going to start experimenting with maybe flat fee services or subscription services. Would you be interested in testing this with me? Or I'm going to try a new set of cloud-based communication tools to work with you. I'm going to move to e-signatures. Are you game? Like, just think about the small changes you can adopt. That's my kind of standard answer to the question. My COVID-19 era answer is all the rules are out the window, and the greatest gift that the COVID-19 pandemic has given us, and a silver lining on all the humanitarian tolls this virus is exacting, the silver lining is that all the old rules are out the window, and we have got an unbelievable amount of permission to innovate and try new things. And we're doing it out of necessity rather than out of being innovative. And we can marry those two things. We can do it out of necessity, we can do it out of the need to survive, and we can innovate and do some really cool stuff that our clients are going to be more willing than they've ever been to see us deliver legal services in a brand new way.
What a perfect message to draw this to a conclusion on, Jack. That was a great message. Thank you so much for all your work with Clio. Co-founding that, developing it, your conferences, your research, now your book. And I'm going to send you back over to Hirsch to close it off for us all.
Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Jack, again. That was fantastic. I can't picture anyone better to kick off our Legal Gold Rush series than with you and your client-centered thinking. So that's great. And just that example around the 2-minute response and the typical 2-day response, I think really sums up everything that I know our series is all about and trying to get into the mind of the consumer. So thank you very much, Jack. And for everyone on the line, thank you very much for joining us today. Next week, we will be back on Tuesday, April 28th at 11:30. And we will have Justice Himonas, who is the Justice of the Utah Supreme Court, who will be talking about modernizing regulation for the benefit of the consumer. So look out for the invitation that will come out tomorrow. And thank you again for everyone for joining. Have a great day.